I am giving an overview of modern history with an eye towards uncovering the patterns that give insight into the world we live in today. Now I'm going to look at the 1980s with new eyes, starting with 1981, the year I graduated from high school. My name is Michelle Gibson. So far, the patterns I have uncovered show events and people being manipulated for particular outcomes, deceiving us about what was really going on to gain our consent, partitioning one country into two, setting up two different political systems, and then instigating them to fight each other. And things like seeing communist regimes take down hereditary rulers in Cambodia, Iran, and Ethiopia in the 1970s, leading to massive repression, suffering, and death. Now let's see what was happening upon my entry into adulthood. On January 19th, Iran and the United States signed an agreement to release the 52 Iranian hostages after 14 months or 444 days of captivity, of which the release took place on the following day, minutes after the inauguration of Ronald Reagan as President of the United States. Just a little over 2 months after his inauguration, there was an assassination attempt on President Reagan by lone gunman John Hinckley Jr. on March 30th. Hinckley was said to be seeking fame in order to impress actress Jodie Foster, with whom he was obsessed. Then on May 13th, there was an assassination attempt on the life of Pope John Paul II as he entered St. Peter's Square to greet his supporters by the Turkish gunman Mehmet Ali Aja. The first cases of AIDS recognized by the CDC took place on June 5th. AIDS is the acronym for Acquired Immunodeficiency Syndrome, a disease caused by the HIV virus, and short for the Human Immunodeficiency Virus, a retrovirus that inserts a copy of its RNA genome into the DNA of the host cell it invades and interferes with a person's immune system. It was said to originate from monkeys in West Central Africa. On August 12th, IBM released the original 5150 IBM PC in the United States, the first of the IBM PCs, which had a substantial influence on the personal computer market. On October 6th, Egyptian President Anwar Sadat was assassinated, and Hosni Mubarak was elected president on October 14th, and he was Egypt's president for the next 30 years. There were gas explosions at the Hakutan Shinko coal mine on October 16th, at the time Hokkaido's newest mine in Japan, killing 93 people. On December 1st, a Yugoslavian charter flight crashed into a mountain peak on the island of Corsica, killing all 180 passengers on board. A week later, on December 8th, the number 21 mine explosion took place in Whitwell, Tennessee, killing 13 people. On December 11th, the El Mozote massacre took place during the El Salvador Civil War, where a Salvadoran army unit killed 900 civilians. On January 7th of 1982, the Commodore 64 8-bit home computer was launched by Commodore International in Las Vegas, becoming the highest-selling single personal computer model of all time. Air Florida Flight 90 crashed into the 14th Street Bridge in Washington, D.C. on January 13th, shortly after takeoff, and landed in the Potomac River, killing 78, allegedly due to a series of pilot errors that resulted from the pilot not turning on the engine's internal ice protection systems. On the same day, in the same city, a Washington, D.C. Metro subway train derailed, killing 3 people. On January 18th, 4 Thunderbird aircraft in a demonstration squadron crashed in the Indian Springs Diamond Crash in Nevada. The first computer virus, called the Elk cloner, which infected Apple II computers via floppy disk, was found on January 30th. It was written by Rich Skrenta, who was 15 years old at the time. Skrenta is currently a computer programmer and Silicon Valley entrepreneur. On February 9th, Japan Airlines Flight 350 crashed in Tokyo Bay, killing 24 of 174 people on board, with blame attributed to deliberate actions of the captain of the plane. The Ocean Ranger oil platform sank during a storm off the coast of Newfoundland, killing all 84 rig workers on it at the time. The invasion of the British overseas territory of the Falkland Islands off the coast of Argentina began on April 1st of 1982, when Argentine forces landed near Stanley, marking the beginning of the Falklands War. British administration of the islands was restored at the end of the war, 2 months later. There was an assassination attempt in London on the life of Israeli ambassador to the United Kingdom, Shlomo Argov, on June 3rd, which was used for the justification of the start of the Lebanon War of 1982, where on June 6th, the Israeli Defense Forces invaded southern Lebanon to go after the Palestine Liberation Organization, or PLO, forces operating there. Also known as Operation Peace for Galilee, the Lebanon War lasted until 1985. Sao Paulo Airways, known as VASP, Flight 168 crashed into a forested hillside in Fortaleza in Brazil on June 8th, killing 137 people. The cause of the crash was attributed to pilot error. A month later, on July 9th, Pan Am Flight 759 crashed in Kenner, Louisiana, killing all 146 on board the plane and 8 on the ground. The cause of this crash was said to be due to a microburst shortly after takeoff from New Orleans, with a microburst being a strong ground-level wind system. On July 20th, the Provisional Irish Republican Army, or IRA, detonated 2 bombs in central London, one in Hyde Park and the other in Regent's Park, killing 8 soldiers, wounding 47 people, and killing 7 horses. The Chicago Tylenol murders occurred between September 29th and October 1st after 7 people died in the Chicago area after taking Tylenol capsules laced with potassium cyanide. No suspect was ever charged or convicted for the poisonings. On November 7th, a gas tanker exploded in the Salong Tunnel in Afghanistan, with estimates of the death toll ranging from 176 to 2,700. There was no clear cause of the explosion given, of which the gas tanker was said to be a part of a Soviet military convoy, with claims ranging from it being an accident to a successful terrorist attack. The Minneapolis Thanksgiving Day fire took place on November 25th and 26th of 1982 and destroyed 2 buildings covering an entire block in downtown Minneapolis. One was the Northwestern National Bank building, said to have been built in 1930 by the architectural firm of Graham, Anderson, Probst, and White, and the other was the abandoned Donaldson's department store. The fire was said to have been started by juvenile arsonists using an acetylene torch, though they were never charged. Minneapolis's famous weather ball sat on top of the Northwestern National Bank building, which predicted the weather based on the color it was displaying, and was also destroyed in the fire. Starting on December 3rd, a final soil sample was taken at Times Beach in Missouri, which had 300 times the safe level of dioxin, and on December 23rd, the EPA recommended evacuation of the community based on these results. On February 23rd of 1983, the EPA announced its intention to buy out, and the entire population of Times Beach was subsequently relocated. So, apparently what happened was an independent contractor was hired to dispose of concentrated dioxin waste from a chemical company in the area. The contractor was the owner of a small waste oil business, and he mixed the dioxin waste into motor oil tanks, which he then used to coat local horse arenas and roads for dust suppression starting in 1971. The site of Times Beach has housed a state park since 1999, commemorating Route 66, and the EPA removed Times Beach from its Superfund list in 2001. Now on to 1983. January 1st marked the beginning of the true Internet when ARPANET, or the Advanced Research Projects Agency Network, migrated to TCP/IP, the Internet Protocol Suite. In Turin, Italy, a fire in the Cinema Statuto killed 64 people on February 13th, the largest disaster in Turin since World War II. The fire was said to have started from flames spread by an old curtain, and that the burning of the theater seats created hydrogen cyanide fumes, of which inhalation was the primary cause of death of the victims. All but one of the theater's emergency exits was said to have been closed and locked. 3 days later, in Australia, the Ash Wednesday bushfires took place in the states of South Australia and Victoria on February 16th. They were a series of bushfires that within 12 hours there were 180 fires fanned by winds up to 68 miles per hour, or 110 kilometers per hour, made worse by severe drought and extreme weather. The fires claimed the lives of 75 people and caused widespread destruction. The Nellie Massacre took place on February 18th, described as one of the worst pogroms since World War II. which is a violent riot aimed at the massacre or expulsion of an ethnic or religious group. In a 6-hour period, there was a varying estimate of between 2,100 and 10,000 Muslim residents of Assam in northeastern India after natives of the area were enraged, so we are told, that Prime Minister Indira Gandhi made the decision to give millions of immigrants from Bangladesh the right to vote. On March 8th, IBM released the Personal Computer XT Model 5160, similar to the Model 5150, except that it had a hard drive built in and extra expansion slots. The Ismaning radio transmitter, the last wooden radio tower in Germany, was demolished on March 16th. After having been defunct since 1977, it was a large radio transmitting station that started operating in Bavaria, Germany in 1932. The U.S. Embassy bombing in Beirut took place on April 18th. It was a suicide bombing that killed 32 Lebanese, 17 Americans, and 14 visitors, and considered the beginning of Islamist attacks on U.S. targets. Suicide attacks and bombings are any violent attacks in which the attackers accept their own death as a direct result. Between 1981 and 2015, over 4,800 suicide attacks occurred in over 40 countries, killing an estimated 45,000 people. On May 20th, the Church Street car bombing took place in Pretoria, South Africa, killing 16 and injuring 130 people. Responsibility for it was claimed by a military wing of the African National Congress. The Benton fireworks disaster took place on Webb's Bait Farm in Benton, Tennessee on May 27th, where we are told there was an explosion at an unlicensed and illegal fireworks operation, resulting in 11 deaths and 1 injury. The initial explosion was heard 20 miles or 32 kilometers away. On June 13th, Pioneer 10 passed the orbit of Jupiter, an American space probe that was launched in 1972, and the first of 5 artificial objects to achieve the escape velocity needed to leave the solar system. Meanwhile, back on Earth, on June 18th, 17-year-old Iranian teenager Mona Mahmoudnezha and 9 other women were hanged at the order of the Iranian Revolutionary Court for the crime of being members of the Baha'i faith in the Islamic Republic of Iran after being imprisoned and tortured. A North Korean plane crashed into a mountain in the West African country of Guinea on July 1st, resulting in 23 deaths and attributed to pilot error. On July 15th, the Turkish Airlines counter at the Orly Airport in Paris was bombed by the Armenian terrorist organization ASALA, killing 8 people and injuring 55. The Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam killed 13 Sri Lankan soldiers in an ambush on July 23rd, immediately after which an anti-Tamil pogrom started that escalated into spontaneous mass violence with significant public participation. Over a period of 7 days in what is known as Black July, mobs attacked, burned, looted, and killed Tamil targets, with the death toll estimated at over 3,500, and their homes and shops destroyed. This was seen as the beginning of the Sri Lankan Civil War, which lasted until 2009. On August 21st, Benigno Aquino Jr., a Filipino political leader who was in opposition to President Ferdinand Marcos, was assassinated at the Manila International Airport upon his return from a self-imposed exile. The old Philadelphia Arena, an auditorium used mainly for sporting events, was destroyed by arson on August 24th. Korean Airlines Flight 007 was shot down by a Soviet Air Force air-to-air missile when it flew into Soviet-prohibited airspace due to what we are told was a navigational error, killing all 269 people on board on September 1st. Gulf Air Flight 771 crashed in the desert in the United Arab Emirates on September 23rd after a bomb exploded in the baggage compartment, killing 112. Palestinian terrorist organization the Abu Nidal Group was believed to have planted the bomb, allegedly to convince Saudi Arabia to pay protection money to the Abu Nidal Group to avoid attacks on their soil. The Rangoon bombing took place on October 9th. The South Korean President Chun Doo-hwan and his delegation were in Rangoon and went to the martyrs' mausoleum there to lay a wreath. 3 bombs detonated during the visit, killing 21 and injuring 46. The South Korean president survived, but other senior officials in his administration did not. It was believed to have been perpetrated by North Korean agents. The Beirut barracks bombing took place on October 23rd, where simultaneous suicide truck bombings destroyed both the French Army and Marine Corps barracks there, killing 307 and injuring 75, with Hezbollah believed to be behind it, an Islamist militant group based in Lebanon. Armed forces of the United States and a coalition of 6 Caribbean nations invaded the island nation of Grenada on October 25th and lasted 4 days. It resulted in the toppling of the Communist People's Revolutionary Government, the removal of the Cuban military presence, and the restoration of the former government. There was a bombing in the Senate of the U.S. Capitol building on November 7th with the intent to kill Republican senators by the May 19th Communist Organization, a U.S.-based terrorist organization formed by the Weather Underground Organization in retaliation for the U.S. military involvement in Grenada and Lebanon. There were no deaths or injuries as a result of the bombing. On November 27th, the Colombian Avianca Flight 11 crashed into a hill near Barajas Airport in Madrid, Spain, killing 181 of the 192 people on board, and attributed to pilot error in making a wrong turn on approach. It was the worst accident in the history of Avianca and mainland Spain. A little over a week after the Avianca crash, on December 7th, 2 Spanish passenger planes crashed on a foggy runway at a Madrid airport, killing 93 people, and known to history as the Madrid runway disaster. Then on December 17th, the Alcalá 20 nightclub fire occurred in the center of Madrid, in which 82 people were killed and 27 injured out of the 600 in the building at the time. An exit on an upper floor was locked, and a main exit to an adjoined building was closed with an iron grill during the fire. In London on December 17th, the same day as the Alcalá 20 nightclub fire in Madrid, the Harrods bombing took place. Members of the Provisional Irish Republican Army planted a time bomb in a car in front of Harrods department store and issued a 37-minute warning before it exploded, during which time the area was evacuated. 6 people were killed and 90 injured. 2 bombs exploded in France on December 31st, one on a high-speed train in Paris, and one in the luggage room of Marseille's terminus train station. The Venezuelan terrorist Carlos de Jackal was convicted for these terrorist acts many years later, in December of 2011. It seems like between 1945 and 1980, there were more regional civil wars, conflicts, and proxy wars going on, where events and people in certain places were manipulated for particular outcomes, and at the same time deceiving us about what was really going on to gain our consent. The implementation of communism in places around the world, with things taking place like citizenry being forced onto collectivized farms, and subsequent famines resulting in the deaths of millions. And the beginnings of terrorism as we have come to know it. And then fast forward to doing this research now and realizing that all hell broke loose all over the earth starting in 1981, the year I graduated from high school. Multiple assassination attempts and assassinations, AIDS, explosions in mines, frequent plane crashes and planes blown out of the sky by bombs, many massacres and atrocities against innocent civilian populations, regular people traumatically dying at theaters and nightclubs, and fires of all kinds, suicide bombings, and on and on and on. And that is just from 1981 to 1983. Certainly some of the incidents attributed to accident could have actually been accidents, but back then we didn't even think about the possibility they could have been intentionally caused for maximum psychological effect. As we shall see, our collective human consciousness has been continuously seeded from 1981 onward with the notion we could meet a violent, horrible death randomly at any given moment by forces beyond our control, and genocide was committed on large numbers of people in populations where there was armed conflict around the world, and that somehow all of this is normal. Over the years, our collective consciousness has been raised about false flags, defined as operations committed with the intent of disguising the actual source of responsibility and pinning blame on a second party. It is also interesting to note that from the beginning of the 1980s forward was when the personal computer and internet came into being in our lives, ultimately allowing us to instantaneously connect with each other all over the world and bypass mainstream media for news and information. Definitely a very important development for our mass awakening and a way out of tyranny and the dystopian nightmare that was planned for us. Has the Earth's population been experiencing a very calculated and undeclared psychological war based on terror and trauma against all of humanity for the last 40 years to bring us to what is going on against humanity in the world in which we live today? There are many clues that what has taken place is part of someone or something's blueprint. Albert Pike, the sovereign Grand Commander of the Scottish Rite's southern jurisdiction, was believed to have written a letter to Italian Illuminatist Giuseppe Mazzini with the military blueprint for 3 world wars. This was what Pike was reported to have said with regards to World War I. The First World War must be brought about in order to permit the Illuminati to overthrow the power of the czars in Russia and of making that country a fortress of atheistic communism. His reported words with regards to World War II. The Second World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences between the fascists and the political Zionists. This war must be brought about so that Nazism is destroyed and that the political Zionism be strong enough to institute a sovereign state of Israel and Palestine. During the Second World War, international communism must be strong enough in order to control Christendom. And this about World War III. The Third World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences caused by the Asian tour of the Illuminati between the political Zionists and the leaders of the Islamic world. The war must be conducted in such a way that Islam and political Zionism mutually destroy each other. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, that Pike didn't actually write these things in a letter to Mazzini in 1871. But even if he didn't, doesn't this sound very familiar? Like it was what has actually already taken place and has been taking place in world history?